You were taught that Allah has 99 names. You were told to memorize them, to repeat them, to call upon them. But no one told you this, that Allah hid something, not because it was unimportant, but because it was too powerful. There is a level of nearness to Allah, where words stop working, where repetition becomes unnecessary, and where dua is answered before it finishes leaving the heart. Most people will never reach it, not because Allah excludes them, but because they leave too early. They rush, they demand signs, they turn away when silence appears. But what if that silence is not rejection? What if it is selection? What if Allah hides His greatest closeness from those who want results and reveals it only to those who can wait without needing proof? This is not a story about a name. It is a warning about the heart, because the hidden name of Allah was never meant to be spoken loudly. It was meant to be carried quietly. And if this message has found you, it may not be random. It may be a reminder that Allah has been listening long before you learned how to speak. Not all divine knowledge is meant to be shared. There is a mistake many people make when they think about divine knowledge. They assume that if something exists, it must be available to everyone equally. But Islam never taught us that. Allah Himself tells us that guidance is layered. Revelation came in stages. Wisdom unfolded over time. Even the Quran was not revealed all at once, because hearts were not ready all at once. So ask yourself, if Allah delayed revelation for mercy, why would He not also withhold certain knowledge for protection? Not every truth is hidden because it is dangerous. Some truths are hidden because the soul is fragile. The idea of a hidden name of Allah challenges something deep inside us. It challenges our desire to possess, to control, to feel special. But Allah does not grant nearness as a reward for curiosity. He grants it as a consequence of purification. There were companions who knew things others did not. There were scholars who remained silent about insights. Allah gave them, not because they were selfish, but because they understood that knowledge in the wrong heart becomes a test, not a blessing. The Prophet taught openly what people needed to survive spiritually. But even he warned that some knowledge, if spoken publicly, would confuse minds, inflate egos, and corrupt intentions. This is why Allah hides, not to keep you distant, but to keep you safe. The hidden name of Allah is not a secret locked away out of fear. It is concealed out of mercy. Because if power comes before humility, the soul breaks. Think about this. Allah gives wealth only to those who can be tested by it. He gives leadership only to those who can be crushed by it and still remain just. So why would divine power be different? If Allah has hidden something from you, it is not evidence that you are unworthy. It is evidence that the timing is not right. And timing in Allah's wisdom is everything. Many people want access before preparation. They want answers before patience. They want results before surrender. But Allah does not open doors for hands that are grabbing. He opens them for hands that are open. The hidden name teaches us something painful but necessary. Closeness to Allah is not about accumulating secrets. It is about becoming the kind of servant who no longer needs them. When you understand this, you stop chasing what Allah hides and start becoming someone Allah reveals Himself to. And that shift, that quiet surrender, is where real power begins. The most powerful du'as come from purity, not words. Most people believe that du'as are answered because of what is said. They search for exact phrases, correct sequences, special names spoken in the right order. But Allah never promised to answer the tongue. He promised to respond to the heart. Two people can raise their hands with the same words. One sees the doors of heaven open, the other feels nothing change. Why? Because Allah does not listen the way humans listen. He listens to truth, not performance. The hidden name of Allah exposes this misunderstanding. It shows us that power was never in pronunciation. It was always in purity. A heart filled with arrogance can memorize every name of Allah and still remain distant. A heart filled with sincerity can whisper a broken sentence and shake the unseen. This is why some of the most answered du'as were never eloquent. They were not beautiful. They were desperate. They were honest. They were raw. The scholars say that when a servant reaches true ikhlas, their dara no longer needs decoration. It reaches Allah before the sentence is finished. The hidden name does not respond to demand. It responds to need. It does not answer those who speak loudly. It answers those who are inwardly silent, those whose ego has finally stepped aside. Many people ask, why does Allah delay my dua? But the better question is, what part of me still stands between my heart and Allah? Sometimes the delay is not about timing. It is about cleansing. Allah purifies the heart until the dua becomes light enough to rise. This is why the most powerful du'as often come after loss, after exhaustion, after disappointment, after you stop trying to impress Allah and finally stand before Him as you truly are. The hidden name of Allah is not unlocked by effort. It is unlocked by collapse. When pride falls, when self-reliance breaks, when you stop negotiating with destiny and simply surrender. At that moment, even silence becomes a dua, and Allah answers. Not because you said the right name, but because you became the right servant. Allah will repeat the name to protect you from yourself. If Allah gave every servant access to unlimited power, most would destroy themselves with it. This is a truth we do not like to face. Human beings do not fail because they lack strength. They fail because they receive strength before wisdom. Allah knows the nature of the soul. He knows how quickly sincerity can turn into entitlement, how gratitude can turn into pride, how trust can turn into control. This is why Allah hides, not because He is distant, but because He is deeply aware. Imagine if a person's dua was answered instantly every time. How long would it take before humility disappeared? How quickly would patience be abandoned? How fast would dependence on Allah be replaced by dependence on results? The hidden name of Allah is not dangerous because of what it does. It is dangerous because of what it can awaken in the nafs. Power reveals what discipline hides. Allah protects His servants by withholding until they are ready. Just as a parent does not give a child fire, Allah does not give spiritual power to untrained hearts. Many people think unanswered du'as are punishment, but often they are protection. Protection from arrogance, protection from misuse, protection from becoming someone you would later regret being. The scholars understood this. They feared being given too much too soon. They feared answered du'as that would harden the heart instead of softening it. That fear is wisdom. Allah hides the name because some doors, once opened, change a person forever. If you are not grounded, you will not rise. You will drift. So Allah delays, He withholds, He refines, until the servant no longer asks, "Give me power," but instead asks, "Make me safe." At that moment, Allah knows the heart can be trusted. The hidden name is not given to those who want control over outcomes. It is given to those who have made peace with Allah's choice. When you stop trying to bend destiny, destiny begins to lean toward you. And that is when Allah reveals, not the name itself, but its effect. The hidden name is felt before it is known. There are things in this world that cannot be learned through explanation. They can only be recognized. Closeness to Allah is one of them. Before a servant ever understands a hidden reality, Allah allows them to feel it, not with words, not with intellect, but with presence. This is why some people struggle to explain what happens during certain du'as. They say things like, "I don't know what changed, but something did. I felt calm, even though nothing was solved. I stopped asking, but I felt heard." That is not imagination. That is nearness. The hidden name of Allah does not announce itself. It does not introduce itself. It does not arrive with signs and spectacles. It arrives as certainty, a certainty that settles the heart before the situation changes. Allah trains His servants gently. He does not overwhelm them with truths they cannot carry. Instead, He gives them tastes. A moment of peace in the middle of anxiety. A sudden stillness during a storm of thoughts. A quiet acceptance where resistance once lived. These moments are not answers. They are invitations. Invitations to stop trying to define Allah and start trusting Him. Many people think knowledge brings faith, but in reality, faith invites knowledge. Allah allows the servant to feel the effect of the hidden name, long before they ever understand its meaning. Because if you understand too early, you will try to use it. But if you feel it first, you will respect it. The people closest to Allah do not talk much about what they experience. Not because they are hiding something, but because words would cheapen it. Some realities lose their weight when spoken. This is why Allah hides the name in sensation, not syllables, in stillness, not sound, in surrender, not speech. If you have ever felt your heart become light during dua, without knowing why, you were closer than you realized. And if you chase that feeling, it disappears. But if you remain sincere, it returns. Because the hidden name is not something you reach. It is something that finds you. When you finally stop searching, Allah answers differently when you stop rushing Him. There is a silent tension that lives inside most du'as. It is not desperation. It is urgency. A hidden demand that says, "Ya Allah, answer me now, or I will lose hope." But Allah does not respond to pressure. He responds to trust. Rushing Allah is not always loud. Sometimes it sounds polite. Sometimes it wears the language of patience. But deep inside, the heart is still counting seconds, days, outcomes. And Allah sees that. The moment a servant believes that relief must arrive on their schedule, the dua changes shape. It stops being surrender and becomes negotiation. This is why Allah often delays not the answer, but the form of the answer. Because if Allah gives you exactly what you asked for, while your heart is still rushing Him, the relief would only deepen your attachment to results, not to Him. The hidden name of Allah does not operate in haste. It operates in alignment. When a servant slows down internally, when they stop measuring their faith by visible outcomes, something subtle happens. The doba becomes lighter, the heart becomes quieter, and the request becomes sincere again. At that point, Allah responds differently. Sometimes He removes the problem. Sometimes He removes the fear of the problem. Sometimes He removes the version of you that would have been destroyed by the answer. Most people think Allah delays because He is testing patience, but often He delays because He is reshaping desire, so that when the answer finally comes, It does not corrupt the heart. Think about how many things you once begged for that would have ruined you if they arrived early. Allah remembered when you forgot. This is why the people closest to Allah are never frantic in duda. They ask deeply, but they do not rush. They understand something rare. Allah is never late. He is precise. The hidden name of Allah becomes active when the servant reaches a point where they can say truthfully, Ya Allah, if this never changes, you are still enough. That sentence is not defeat, it is power. Because the moment Allah sees a heart that no longer needs proof, He gives reassurance. Not always by changing circumstances, but by changing weight. The burden becomes lighter. The waiting becomes peaceful. The silence becomes meaningful. And sometimes, without warning, the very thing you stop chasing arrives. Not as a reward for patience, but as a gift for trust. Allah answers differently when you stop rushing Him, because He is no longer protecting you from the answer. He is walking with you toward it. And when that happens, even if the outcome surprises you, your heart remains intact. That is the mercy hidden inside delay. That is the wisdom behind unanswered du'as. And that is why the hidden name is revealed, not to urgency, but to calm certainty. The name is hidden because Allah wants relationship, not shortcuts. Human beings love shortcuts. We look for formulas, keys, techniques, anything that promises results without transformation. But Allah does not build relationships through shortcuts. He builds them through return. Every time you make dua, Allah is not only listening to what you want, He is watching how you come to Him. Do you come rushing, demanding relief? Do you come calculating outcomes? Or do you come simply because there is nowhere else your heart belongs? The hidden name of Allah exposes this difference. Way, the hidden name of Allah exposes this difference. If Allah had placed ultimate power into a single word, most people would use Allah, not love Him. They would visit Him only when they needed something, and disappear when life felt easy again. Allah does not want visitors. He wants companions. This is why He hides what people try to exploit. A shortcut bypasses struggle, but struggle is where sincerity is revealed. It is where ego weakens. It is where the heart learns who it truly depends on. If Allah answered every dua instantly, many hearts would never mature. They would remain transactional, faith reduced to a tool instead of a bond. The hidden name is not hidden because Allah is withholding mercy. It is hidden because Allah is preserving connection. When a servant walks with Allah through unanswered prayers, through long nights, through confusion and waiting, something irreversible happens. The servant changes. Their faith is no longer fragile. Their trust is no longer conditional. Their relationship with Allah is no longer based on outcomes. They begin to pray not just to receive, but to remain close. That is the turning point. Allah does not give shortcuts to people who would abandon the path once they get what they want. He gives depth to those who are willing to walk even when the road is quiet. Many people say, if Allah would just answer this one thing, my faith would be stronger. But Allah knows the opposite is often true. Faith that depends on immediate answers collapses the moment silence returns. So Allah trains His servants differently. He removes their addiction to results and replaces it with reliance. The hidden name becomes accessible only when the servant no longer seeks leverage over destiny, when they stop trying to control the unseen and accept that Allah sees what they cannot. At that stage, the dua is no longer a request. It becomes a conversation. And conversations do not need shortcuts. They need presence. Allah wants a heart that returns even when nothing is changing. A heart that speaks even when it feels unheard. A heart that trusts even when the future is unclear. That heart is rare, and rare hearts are trusted with what others are not. The hidden name is not a prize at the end of the journey. It is the byproduct of walking sincerely for long enough. When Allah sees that you would still choose Him, even if nothing ever changed, He knows the relationship is real. And when the relationship is real, Allah no longer needs to hide anything from you. When Allah trusts you with silence, you are closer than you think. Most people believe closeness to Allah looks like signs, answers, movement, change. They think nearness is loud. They think it announces itself. But the opposite is often true. The deepest form of closeness is silence. Not the silence of neglect, but the silence of trust. There comes a stage in a believer's journey where the doors no longer feel urgent. Not because the problems disappeared, but because the heart stopped panicking. At that stage, Allah does something unusual. He removes noise, the constant emotional spikes, the desperation, the need for reassurance every moment. And what remains feels unsettling at first. Quiet. Many mistake this silence for distance. They assume Allah has turned away. But in reality, Allah has drawn nearer than before. Because silence is not emptiness. It is space. Space where the heart can finally rest without demanding proof. Allah does not trust every servant with silence, because silence exposes what words hide. In silence, ego has nowhere to perform. Faith has no applause. Patience has no audience. Only sincerity survives there. This is why the hidden name of Allah is associated with stillness, not because it is inactive, but because it operates beneath reaction. When Allah places a servant in silence, He is watching one thing. Will you remain, even when there is nothing to hold on to? Will you continue to turn toward Him without emotional reward, without visible signs, without answers you can point to? Most people leave here. They search for something louder, something that reacts, something that gives them certainty on demand. But those who stay enter a different kind of relationship with Allah. Their faith stops swinging with circumstances. Their heart stops collapsing with delay. Their dua becomes steady, grounded, unshaken. They no longer ask Allah to prove His care. They already know that knowing is not intellectual. It is embodied. It shows in how they wait, in how they respond to loss, in how they accept outcomes they did not choose. This is the stage where Allah entrusts the servant not with words, but with weight, the weight of contentment. Contentment is not happiness. It is alignment. It is the moment the heart stops arguing with destiny. At this stage, the hidden name no longer needs to be spoken because its effect is already present. The servant Seb's presence becomes calm. Their dua becomes quiet. Their trust becomes visible even in hardship. They stop chasing miracles because they have become one internally, and something subtle happens. Allah begins to answer without announcement. Doors open quietly. Relief arrives without drama. Problems resolve without spectacle. Not because the servant demanded it, but because nothing inside them resisted Allah anymore. This is the highest form of response. The servant no longer feels the need to tell others what they know, because silence has taught them something words cannot carry. That Allah's greatest gifts are not always in what He reveals, but in what He allows you to carry without breaking. If you are in a season where your duas feel quiet, where answers feel delayed, where everything seems still. Do not assume abandonment. You may have been entrusted with something rare. Allah may be teaching you that closeness is not about hearing His voice, but about recognizing His presence even when nothing is said. And when you reach that point, the hidden name is no longer hidden from you, not because you discovered it, but because you no longer need to. If you were hoping for a secret word, a formula, or a shortcut, then this message was not meant to give you one. Because Allah never hid His greatest closeness in syllables, He hid it in states of the heart. The ones who rush will never find it. The ones who demand signs will overlook it. But the ones who stay, even in silence, will recognize it without being told. Perhaps the hidden name of Allah was never something to be spoken. Perhaps it was the moment your heart stopped arguing with destiny. The moment your daughter became calm. The moment you trusted Allah without needing to understand His plan. If you are still waiting, still praying, still turning back to Him, even when nothing has changed, then know this: you are not forgotten, you are not distant, and you are not late. You may be closer than you think, so keep returning, keep trusting, and let Allah decide what must remain hidden and what must finally be revealed. Because what Allah gives at the right time never breaks the heart that receives it, and what He withholds is often mercy in disguise.